It's time once again for a special update from Representative Kristin Robbins, representing Maple Grove surrounding areas. Welcome, Representative. How are you today?
I'm great, Dave. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for taking some time with us during this special session. We caught you in a little bit of break here on this Monday afternoon, so we wanted to touch on a few things related to COVID-19 that you've been working with and a few other items. First, related to COVID, take us back to the emergency powers vote. That obviously is what started this second special session. Give us a recap of that event.
Yes, so as everyone knows, every 30 days, if the governor chooses to extend his emergency powers, the statute requires he calls us back into session and we can vote to end the emergency. It takes a majority of both the House and Senate, and the Senate voted to end the emergency, and once again, the House did not. I would say from my perspective, because I support ending the emergency powers, that we made a little progress. Last month we had 2 DFLers vote with us. This month we had 4. So we need 9 total to end the emergency powers. So we're making incremental progress. And my encouragement to everyone is just how you think about it. When we talk to the governor, we're in negotiations with the governor on this. It's not that everything would just come full stop end. We are working with the governor to come up with a list of things that would continue because he would need to do that. But the idea is to, now that the emergency phase of the crisis is over, we're in the management phase, and this crisis will be with us for a while. And so it's time for the legislature to again have an active role and be the voice of the people in these decisions. Rather than having one person make all the decisions for the entire state, we want the legislature to again be a co-equal branch of government in managing the crisis.
Let's talk a little bit about schools for a minute. Obviously on top of everyone's mind right now. What have you heard from constituents? What are some of the things that are being talked about at the Capitol related to schools?
Right, well, the big date that the governor is supposed to announce his decision is July 27th. So everyone is waiting to hear and trying to give their very best input to the governor, including me. So last week I wrote a letter to the governor, which was signed by 22 or 24 of my colleagues, where we asked the governor to allow each district to make their own decisions. And I gave a speech on the floor about this last week, where the data just does not support a statewide mandate. The number of cases in different counties and different districts is a wide variation. And so what works in one area won't necessarily be required in another area. And we think that school districts working with parents and teachers know what best will suit the needs of their community, not only based on COVID numbers, but also on the availability of broadband and technology resources and other things. So we're just encouraging the governor to let each district make that decision for themselves.
Let's talk about some other things that have been happening during this special session related to evictions, housing, and support to cities. Give us the recap of those 3 very important points and what has been happening.
Sure, this was sort of done through the governor's emergency powers, not really related to the special session, but in the last special session, we had an agreement between all 4 caucuses, Republican, Democrat, House and Senate, to send federal COVID dollars to cities and counties. And that did not get passed at the last minute, even though we had a signed agreement, because the governor added a supplemental budget request that kind of blew the whole deal up. So once we got out of special session, he unilaterally appropriated that money, which again goes back to the idea that he's doing our job and we should be at the table doing the appropriations. But that money is out there now. And so I'm very pleased to see that he did go with the original agreement in terms of numbers. So what the legislature had agreed to is out there. And it's being used well in our cities. Rogers used it to set up a small business emergency assistance program. So any small businesses in Rogers can apply and get some additional help for keeping their business open. Maple Grove had previously set up a similar program, and so I believe they're using additional resources for that. So 2 great uses of that money in our district, and again, always a champion of supporting small businesses who are really trying to make it work. There's more open, but they're still not at full capacity. They are still not making money. So I just want to reiterate to the public, thank you for everyone who's trying to go out there and support our local businesses. They still need you.
And housing and evictions, what were some of the updates there to help out some Minnesotans?
Sure. So the governor appropriated $100 million of the federal CARES dollars to go towards rental assistance and mortgage assistance. So he was helping both renters and landlords, because they're both struggling in the current crisis. So hopefully that money will help people stay in their homes and will help landlords hang on to their mortgages and keep their buildings so that renters can continue to live there. So both sides of that equation needed assistance, and I was glad to see that get out there.
And you mentioned the federal CARES dollars. What is the latest update? What are we seeing potentially coming up in the next week or 2 or 3? Any indications that you've heard?
Yeah, so the federal government, the Congress, is back in session as of today, and everything I've heard is that they are looking at another $1 trillion package to continue to provide aid to states and counties and cities and individual families through the CARES Act. So I don't know the parameters of that. I know they're looking at also tweaking that right now the $600 in supplemental unemployment insurance that people have been getting from the federal government is due to expire at the end of July. And so there's a lot of talk about whether they'll let that expire, whether they'll come up with some sort of a hybrid program. The problem there has been that even though the money has really helped families, it has also proved to be a disincentive for people to go back to work because they're making more on unemployment than they were in their jobs. And there are a lot of job openings now, and employers can't get people to come back. And so I believe the federal government will be taking a look at doing a hybrid version of that doesn't disincentivize work, but will still provide additional support. So I'm following closely, but today is their first day back, so they don't have much done yet.
Very good. 2 final notes we wanted to touch on. One was a special racism vote. Give us a brief look inside that discussion and that vote.
Yeah, so today the House of Representatives took up a bill, it was a resolution, which is not the force of law, that would have declared racism a public health emergency in the state of Minnesota. And, it was a really interesting and heartfelt debate on both sides. And I ended up voting against the resolution, not because I don't think there are real issues. There are huge disparities in education particularly, but also health and housing and other outcomes between majority and minority families and individuals. So I don't deny that there is a real disparity problem for people who are minorities. But I also really was unclear what the language meant. The word public health emergency was never defined, either in current statute or in the resolution. And just given the experience we're having right now with the governor's emergency powers, I wanted much more clarity on what that would mean to declare a public health emergency and what would ensue with that. And I just didn't feel comfortable from the debate how those questions were answered. But I certainly, in my previous life, I've been very involved in community development work in the Phillips neighborhood. I'm on my church's food shelf board. I really care about making sure all families have the same opportunities. I was a leader on educational achievement gap issues for 20 years. So I really will continue to care about these issues and work on these issues, but I wasn't quite there with the language of the resolution, so I didn't vote to support it.
More discussion to come. Final
Absolutely.
note we wanted to make
an important discussion.
Exactly. People might be familiar with this information that comes from your office on a weekly basis, but because of some rules, that is going to change. Give us a little recap on how the rules will affect that somewhat, and still there are ways to contact you and get information to you. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. It's crazy. Being a freshman, I always feel like I'm like, who knew? Like last year, I had a little section called Who Knew in my newsletter because I'm like, I learned all this stuff about what's at the legislature. But one of the rules is 60 days after the regular session adjourns, we can no longer communicate with our constituents through our official newsletter because they feel like the closer we get to the election, the more that would disadvantage other candidates in the race who don't have that official channel. So I can no longer send my newsletter, which I totally understand and respect the rules, but because we're in special session, I feel weird about it. Like, how will people know? I wish the rules gave us just the opportunity to send one after each special session to just give a little update, but clearly I'm not writing the rules yet. So anyway, so that was my last update. And but I put in there a whole list of links that I really want people to understand. So if you need to know where to get a COVID test, if you want to know how to deal with unemployment, if you have questions about getting loans for your small business, if you have questions about the schools or community gatherings, like I put links to all of that in that newsletter. So please check it out. And if you do want to contact me, I'm still working every day for the people of our district. I'm in my office, I'm at my home office or at the Capitol every day. And you can always email me, and I am allowed to respond to individual emails. So my email is rep.kristin.robbins@house.mn. You can also Google it, but you can email me and I will get back to you about anything, but I just cannot send the group emails anymore.
Excellent. We will have that email address up on the screen so
Thank
people
you.
can see that here and get that information.
And those links, if you wouldn't mind
Yep.
putting that link out with all that information. I especially want people to know COVID testing sites are out there and you can get a test. You have to call in advance. It's easy. I honestly did it a couple weeks ago because I had been exposed to COVID and I was negative and the test was easy. So I just want people to know that as we go forward into fall, that's an important thing.
Very good. Representative Robbins, as always, appreciate your time, and we will keep in touch here as the session winds down. Thank you very much.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have some news. We got several big bills on the horizon yet today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Learn more about the connection at ccxmedia.org and follow us on social media.